It's gonna be a merciless video today, so if you're not ready, please shut it down. Today we'll talk about quick attacks that your opponents try to put together against you to win games quickly using some cheap tricks. And of course, the most annoying one being the so-called early queen attack. In this position, for instance, queen f3 is the second most played move, queen h5 is also common, and by doing so, white simply hopes for this scholar's mate. Now, I just can't wrap my head around this, but this or similar attacks occurred in over 70 million games, much more than you normally assume from such a beginner level trick. I assume that these are the same people who watch TikTok videos out loud on their phones in social situations, and nevertheless, we gotta know how to deal with this. I'll give you 3 simple, actionable strategies against this. Now, the very first thing is, right in this position, of course, we should not blunder the scholar's mate, we need to cover. At this point, your opponent realizes that you want to go knight to d4, hitting the queen and pawn, so they want to stop this by going pawn to c3. And at this point, although your opponent realizes that he couldn't checkmate you within 4 moves, he just wants to get away with this unsound attack, and after that, keep playing as if nothing happened. You want to play knight e2, d3, bishop g5, and just playing a normal game of chess. Moreover, even in the middle game, he may still hope for some sort of pressure on the king side. How do you refute this idea? Now, the very first principle is you do want to open up the center, which usually means that you want to make a pawn move somewhere in the middle of the board and break open the situation there. Now, why do you want to do that? Because you need to open up some lines for your pieces to go forward and start attacking you and punishing him for that unsound attack. Therefore, in this position, you'd really love to play pawn d5 and break open the center that way. However, right now he's got 3 pieces that control this square, and therefore d5 instantly is not really possible. You will blunder a pawn that way. However, there is an easy way to prepare this move. You can just play knight a5, pushing this bishop away, and as it goes anywhere, it doesn't really matter. You then aim to play d5 and achieve your goal. If the bishop stands on the same diagonal, you can just trade it off, and then you strike in the center with pawn to d5, and the first goal is accomplished. We are going to open up the center immediately. Now, white will probably either take or defend. If they take, here comes the second strategy. You want to counterattack. Offense is the best defense, and that is indeed how you punish your opponent and make him suffer, and that is what we all love. So, in this position, you could just play queen takes d5, trade off queens, and that will lead to a beautiful position. However, we want to be more brutal. So, we play bishop g4. We want to counterattack, and in particular, if he uses the early queen attack, it's especially nice that you can counterattack his exposed queen and gain temples for your development. Now, we develop the bishop, we hit the queen, forcing white to waste time running around with the same queen. Now you can grab this pawn on d5 with a bunch of threats. You threaten this pawn on b3, you even threaten queen to e4 check, and it's actually not easy for white because your bishop also joins this attack. And as you can see right now, the situation is already pretty tough for white. What if instead your opponent tries to keep the center closed by playing pawn d3 and defending this pawn that way? Well, we still wish to open up the center as much as we can, therefore we trade on e4. And by the way, these strategies apply to various positions, not just for this particular situation. You still wish to open the center, you wish to counterattack. And you can play an attacking move here by going bishop g4. It's actually the only attacking move that you can play here, but it is enough, because after that the queen is attacked, and whatever white does here leads to queen d1, checkmate. There is another strategy that I love in particular. It's very simple and very effective. For example, let's enter the Scandinavian defense, and some of your opponents will try to attack you from the get-go. They deliver a check, and then they play queen g6, hitting this pawn on g2. What would you play in this situation? Most players play bishop f3 to guard the pawn that way. Some would play pawn to g3, again, just to guard the pawn. But if you're a part of the Igor Nation, we're gonna be more brutal. We're gonna play knight f3, and that is part of the strategy ignore and develop. When your opponents put together these hasty attacks, inevitably they fall behind in development, and you can reinforce that situation by letting them execute their minor threats, but falling completely behind in development, so that later you can turn things around with a devastating counterattack. Now, we allow black to capture this pawn, and after that, yes, they attack a rook, but now you can go rook g1 and gain one more tempo, hitting the queen, and after queen to h3 and let's say just pawn d4, simply trying to develop, guess what? They're up a pawn but they're so far behind in development. And you want to just play bishop f4, continue your development, maybe castle queenside in the long run, and then you're going to attack. Moreover, if they play bishop g4, trying to put some pressure against you that way, we can also recollect our previous idea that you can also counterattack, and especially you can counterattack that exposed queen. You can go rook g3, hitting the queen has to guard the bishop, so queen h5 is forced, and then you can play h3, still targeting these pieces, and basically black is done, because what can they do? If they take here, after bishop take a3, that's actually a double attack, and they're going to lose the game. That's not just a pawn, we're going to grab the rook in the next move after that, and black is defenseless. If instead they try to grab this pawn on h3, they're so greedy, and there must be a payoff. So we go knight to g5, which is a discovered attack to the queen and a double attack to this bishop, and black is once again completely lost. After queen h4 and let's say rook takes h3, the queen is even trapped completely, and that would be just a total devastation. The next example is going to be a perfect illustration of all these strategies together, which is open the center, counterattack, ignore, and develop. By the way, the opening was pretty interesting. It's used even by pretty advanced level players against the Scotch game. All of a sudden, black plays queen to h4, sort of a more advanced version of the scholar's made trick. But here with queen to h4, black aims not only to put pressure down here to your king potentially, but also along the fourth rank to the pawn and knight. Moreover, if white guards this pawn by going knight to c3, black renews the threat by going bishop to b4, pinning the knight, which renews the threat of queen takes e4 check. And somehow this hasty attack often captures white's players by surprise. They don't know what to do, they play bad moves, and they actually lose games. And that is why I actually wanted to record this video so that you know how to deal with such situations. Black starts an unsound attack, but if you are not sure how to deal with this, well, guess what? Black can succeed. Now, most players actually take here on c6, which doesn't really do anything, and in fact it allows black to play this queen takes e4 check in between. Again, the knight is pinned, the knight cannot move. After this, black will get back this knight, and black is just up a pawn with a great position. Therefore, that is just a straightforward blunder. Some players play some passive moves such as queen to d3 just to guard this pawn, but that is passive and that allows black to keep attacking with their next moves. So what do you want to do instead? Well, initially, white used that idea of ignore and develop. They just played bishop e2, saying, you want to win this pawn? Okay, go ahead. I'm just going to continue my development, get a lead in my development, and then I'm going to counterattack. Black took here on a4. There's still this pin, which allows black to do so, and this attacks this knight on d4. Now, I could just trade off on c6, but we wish to counterattack, and white played knight to b5. This is a counterattack to the c7 pawn, which is going to fork the king and rook. Therefore, black already feels a somewhat unpleasant situation. Black tried to trade on c3, trying to deflect this knight, but white said, no way, I'm going to keep attacking. He recaptured with a pawn just to keep the knight on this active position. By the way, you may be wondering, what if queen takes g2, what will you play here? But the answer is bishop f3, which is going to x-ray all that, and then knight takes c7 is going to be real. Therefore, instead, black played king d8. Of course, it's not the move that black wished to play, but they had to centralize the king just to deal with this threat of knight takes c7. After this, white simply castled. Again, we want to ignore and develop. Black played a6. Now, what do we do next? We counterattack. And especially easy it is for us to counterattack this exposed queen. So white played bishop f3, gaining one more tempo. Black played queen c4. And now white needs to deal with this knight attack. And white played a really beautiful move, knight to d6. He just wants to open up the situation around the king. That is the idea of opening the center. And in most situations, you just play a pawn move, trade off pawns, and break open the center that way. But sometimes you can even go beyond that and sacrifice material for the sake of opening lines and diagonals for your attack. Knight d6 hits the queen, this pawn, the bishop possibly, so black took it, but after queen takes d6, now there are a lot of weaknesses around the king. And the most straightforward threat that white has right now is queen to f8, check, followed by queen g7, queen h8, and we play here this little bit of checkers and grab a lot of material. Black try to cover that by going knight f6, the move that seems to make perfect sense. Now the rook is active, and it covers the f8 square as well. White couldn't go there anymore because the rook guards that, therefore white needs to do something else. So white goes bishop e3, threatening bishop b6 check, attacking black with the left hook. And now we can see that black is up a piece, however, he's totally passive. The king is in the middle of the board, the queen keeps running around wasting time, and white is already fully mobilized and attacking, and that is what you want to do to turn the situation around. In the given situation, white is going to checkmate black by going bishop b6 check, then putting the rook to the e-file and putting together this sort of checkmate. Therefore, black played knight e7, at least trying to block the e-file, but white nevertheless moved his rook there, and now the threat is still bishop b6 check to the king, after which this knight is going to be hanging. Black still is trying to hold on, he goes knight to d5, white traded off here, and at this point, of course, white is putting together a very strong attack, but you gotta find the winning blow, and that is a puzzle of the day. Please try to find the winning continuation for white, and if you can, please write it down in comments below. Today we mostly talk about dealing with early queen attacks, but if you want to know how to deal with any kind of attacks of your opponent, check out this video, and it also talks about how to become a stronger player quickly overall. Also, if you want to learn how to improve your positional understanding, head to this free masterclass by clicking the link up there. Hope you enjoyed it, have a great rest of the day.